chat. So I kind of know we are talking about a certain, I would say, context. We've asked a few questions. That's the conversation we are having. So actually behind the scenes, what happens to the chat bison model, or when you're using these chat models, it's not just a one-shot prompt, right? And it just goes and gives you back a response. In the chat model, the previous conversations between like what the user said and then what the system answered, what the user again asked and what the system answered. So you'll actually have behind the scenes, it passes on the previous conversation, not possibly all of it, but sometimes there are techniques there too. But just think of it like maybe the last few messages which have gone to and fro are passed automatically in a context such that even if you're asking like a follow-up, for example, explain this log entry, and then you pass on the log details, and the model responds back saying that, okay, this log entry means so and so. You can just answer, do a follow-up saying, okay, then how do I fix that, right? And it will give you the answer because it knows what you are talking about, right? So chat, the model really retains history to a certain extent, so that that kind of tunes or at least leads the model towards a certain segment in its general intelligence area, and then it tries to keep answering from there. So we just look at the programming model. It's again very straightforward. What you will do as a part of this also is you will be hosting this chat application. So while this chat application might turn out to be, yeah, it looks kind of simple and all, right? But what we're going to be doing is just looking at a workflow. How do you deploy this in Google Cloud? So we will be actually creating a complete Docker image for that application with all the dependencies in it, and then using a service called Cloud Run, which is, I would say, probably the most convenient, frictionless way by which you can host containerized workloads in the cloud today. I'm biased, but that's just the beauty of this things. And some of you who like use Cloud Run might also appreciate the ease with which you could just take a containerized workload and deploy it via a single command. So having said that, enough talk. Let's go forward and do this lab. So I'm assuming all of you are here, and hopefully, if you've been doing this repeatedly, if we go to the next step, that is the same prerequisites, of course, that you've got a cloud project with a billing that has been entered, right? And before we begin, just like how we've been doing for, yeah, Birami, you have some point?
Just wanted to check with you if you can show the credits and how to access it and create a new project if not already done. I'll ping the link to credits is actually pinned in the chat. If you're not seeing it, let me know. Romin.
Okay. So you want me to click that or just go through from my console like last time?
You can just click that once and show. You don't have to activate the credits.
Okay, and now I can see that link. Okay, so I'll just go to that, and I'm just bringing it up on the screen here. Okay, so if you click that link, the Try GCP Dev, this is what you will see to welcome, and you have a particular amount that for which a billing account is created. So if you click here to access your credits, that's where it's going to go to the console, and it's going to tell you to apply it. So basically, while you see a coupon code and the name and all of those things, you can actually select a project from the drop-down box which you see over here. So of course, I've got several projects over here, but you can actually go ahead and create a new project if you want to for this particular lab. So you can click on a new project if you want. And when you do that, you go ahead and create that project and then accept and continue. That same way, you should be able to then apply the credits. So far, okay? Shall we wait for a few minutes, or not minutes, at least some time before people have applied it? A show of hands that we are ready to go. Let's wait a few more seconds while people apply in case they're doing it for the first time. Okay, let's give it a few more seconds. Okay, so let's move forward. So assuming that if I go to the lab instructions, we'll just assume that you've got the project in place, billing, etc. So you assign that particular account. Now, the third step says activate the cloud shell. That's our, Linux machine in the cloud for you. So from the console, right, just go ahead here on top and activate the cloud shell. I've kind of activated it over here, but let's do it once more. So you see this whole thing here, activate the cloud shell. Just click that. And sometimes it's going to take a while it's provisioning and connecting. If you're using it for the first time, it will just take a while to provision that VM and then instantiate it, and of course, connect your terminal session to it, as you're seeing over here. So right now, as you know, I've just completed this step 3, which is to activate the cloud shell. Increase this a bit, activate cloud shell from Google Cloud Console. Now, typically, if I just go back, sorry, let me close these things. Close this. Okay. So typically, right, you will see that when the cloud shell is activated, and if you had selected the right project from the top, you would see that particular project ID over here. If not, just ensure that you do a gcloud config list to maybe do the authorizations as required, and you should be able to see in this list there is a project which is set to your project ID. If not, you don't see this, if it's not the right project, right? And this is important. Just see the step that is telling you. It's telling you to set it to your project ID, right? So I can do the command even if it's set, so I'm showing it to you. You can just say gcloud config set project, and it requires the project ID. So in my case, it's this GCP experiments 349209, right? And just set it. And you'll find that it just says it's updated properly, and that should be fine. So following this, if you do a gcloud config list, you should be able to start seeing your project that is set. So if this is all set, let's move forward to the next step. And like the samples, like last time we covered one of the samples repository in GitHub, which we'll use again. And typically you will find that most of the samples in that repository kind of set to to environment variables. And these environment variables, while you can still hardcode in your code, etc., it is externalizing it to keep it flexible. These are required because when you use Vertex AI, one of the initializations of the library requires that for which project you are going to be using it. That's why, and in which region it's there. So these are the two variables important to set up. That's what we're going to be doing now. So just follow those things. Export GCP project. This should be your project ID. So I'm going to do that and set it to the same value. GCP experiments 349209. And the other one, if you follow, is GCP region, which is one of the Google Cloud regions. So I'm going to be setting it to US Central 1 for now, and just set that. At times typos do happen. We all do that. So just do an echo to make sure that you have indeed set these project. Just make sure there's no typo in the project ID also. If not, it doesn't matter, it will throw the right errors. But it's just useful to make sure that before you move forward, these values are indeed set to what we expected them to be. Fair enough. Now, the last step before we go forward is in a new project, right? Or in any Google Cloud project, we don't enable services by default because some of these could cost. And obviously, also it's a good practice not to just keep the services on because people may start using it. The users or the folks who are added as users to the project. So we are giving you a command here called gcloud services enable. And this is a command to enable various Google Cloud APIs. So we require a few of these, right? So obviously, since this is meant for the entire GitHub repository, at times you might find it's a little bit, one or two services are extra, but doesn't matter. We're going to be using Cloud Run. So there's the Cloud Run, API. We're going to be using login. So we're using the login thing. When we build our application as a container image, and then we have to deploy it right into artifact registry, will require some storage. We're going to be using Cloud Build behind the scenes to build it. Plus, we need Vertex AI, the Palm API, module. So basically, we're going to be enabling all of these services while you can do it one by one also. This is a convenient command. Just take all of it, copy it, paste it into this, whatever, the console here. Not console, the Cloud Shell command. And I've done it for a project, so I'm not doing it again. But give it a while. It will just probably take a few extra seconds till the services are enabled for our project. So we'll wait here till I see a significant amount of time significant amount of folks who are saying, yeah, they are enabled, good to go. These things should all work. So in case you're hitting some issue or the other, ideally not. There are no typos, hopefully, in any of these services. These are done again. So all good. Shall we go ahead? Okay, let's move forward. So what we've done is you've got our project. We've set a couple of variables, and we've set the required Google labels. In case there are some questions related to this, you want to type in or you want to ask Raghavendra? Okay. Yeah, please type it there. Okay, so let's move forward. If there are some general questions we can take towards the end. Right now, I think for the purposes of the flow, we'll just request that we stick to the steps, and if you're hitting some problems in the steps, mention that. Towards the end, we'll keep some time to take some general questions around what we've done today also. Okay. So moving forward, right, we're going to be doing now next is obviously get the code from that GitHub repository. And again, just to show you this GitHub repository, which we are going to be using. We are going to be, last time we used one of it, which was the text predict cloud function, which was there, right? This one. But now today, we are going to be using actually the chat Cloud Run application, which is for the lab today. So obviously, we're going to be just cloning the whole repository. In case you've already done it or using the same thing from last time, probably it's cloned. I don't think I've changed that, at least from last week. Should be fine, but to keep it safe, just probably make a new clone of the whole the GitHub repo that's there. So I'll just take this and I'm going to go to my Cloud Shell here, maybe here. So git clone and let it do its work. Okay. So now that it is cloned, obviously, I'm going to be having one of these, folders out here on my machine. So the next step is to go into that specific project. Just in case you're curious, you want to see other applications, not now, but later on, we've got a helpful table in the README here that just shows you different apps and what each application and the technologies use. So feel free to use it later on. But right now, as you can see, we are going to be using the chat Flask application. So basically, it's about developing a chat application. We're going to be using Python Flask, and obviously behind the scenes, we're going to be using the chat Bison Vertex AI model. The technologies are straightforward. It's Python Flask, and Cloud Run. So the next step it says is just go into that particular a chat Flask Cloud Run. So I'm just going to go there. You can navigate either once or twice or via a single thing over here. Just make sure that if you've kind of executed that command, please pay close attention that you are indeed in the right directory, right, or folder. So just maybe a present working directory. Just make sure you are clear that you are indeed in the chat Flask Cloud Run folder. Cool. So, okay, while it again says set the environment variables, this is again maybe check just in case you just skip that. Okay, every time I don't read requirements or before you begin. So again, it's a good checkpoint here. Make sure these two variables are set. So before we actually jump to the next things, again, remember the next few steps are what? Suppose we'll go to the code in a while. But before we go to the code, assuming that the code is already in place, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be building a Docker image out of it. The Docker image will be saved somewhere, right? And so basically this artifact, which is the container image of the Docker image, is going to be saved somewhere in one of the services we have called the Google Artifact Registry, AR. Sometimes it's just called AR. So it's the artifact registry. Some of you might be familiar with the container registry, which was an earlier incarnation of it. So artifact registry in which we'll be creating one and then we'll be pushing our Docker image into that. That's the cloud build steps behind the scenes. So what this does is it takes all your file, all your code, which we have now, creates a container image and pushes it into the artifact registry. Once that's done, you already have a container image. So the next 6 step, which we'll see in a while, does nothing but simply fire the command cloud run deploy to deploy it from the same artifact registry container image which we have created. That's the end of it. And then the application is ready and we just see it work. So before we go there, right, it just makes sense to maybe take a look at what's going on with the whole thing. And maybe as a little bit of a fun step, I'll also, while it's not in the original script, just make it interesting. Maybe I'll give you a preview of even how one of our assistants in the cloud, Duet AI, can help you understand the code. So how many of you heard of Duet AI in the cloud? Anyone? Not Duet AI for Google Cloud Work. No, sorry, for Workspace, right? Help me write, help me email. That's also very good stuff, but not that. I'm talking about for the cloud, right? So obviously, those of you who've been very attentive as to, am I using a screen that's not similar to yours, right? If you've done some real investigative, detective kind of a work, you'd have noticed I've got another little icon over here, which probably you don't have. But if you have, I'm curious, but that's okay. So this is again one way, but I'll just show you all in the code. Let's stick to our agenda so that we discuss vis-a-vis what we have to do itself. So various ways you can launch the editor, but as you know, we've got this open editor over here. So let's go there. For those of you who are familiar with VS Code or you would like to use VS Code, keep in mind that this is nothing but a VS Code instance itself. So you can actually see, you can switch between the terminal and the editor at any point in time, right? So right now we are in the editor. Those of you who know VS Code or any IDE should find this familiar, right? Let me just sign in into my account. Okay. So it's weird what's happened over here, but just give me a moment. So let me go and just at least open up, right, whichever be the folder that we wanted to open up. So I'll go to our existing thing over here. This is not in the lab, but I just wanted to open up the code in a different way. So let's do that. We're initializing this. Let it come up. So over here are all those applications which you see, right? But for the moment, sorry. Okay. Yeah. So the folder that we wanted to work on is the chat Flask Code Run folder. And in that, right, now you will just see obviously that we've got this main app.py file, right? And over here, similar to like how we did the function, right? So those of you who are familiar with Python Flask, you might be able to follow, but just bear with me, it's the same thing. So as you remember, like we've initialized 2 variables. That's what we are like dealing with over here, just reading out whatever be the environment variables that we may have set. We're setting up logging, etc., etc. As you see over here, I told you those what you call variables were important because we have to initialize the Vertex AI library on it. Now, if I go to the UI, please don't like hold me to what sort of UI skills we've got over here with this demo, but it's nothing but a very straightforward HTML page which just has a simple form and input text file and a button to submit. So basically it takes your query and you submit that query. The query is nothing but the prompt which you want to give to the model. So we've got like the text that you enter, and it goes to the submit function. Submit function, what does it do? It's really hitting this particular endpoint over here, right? And passing the input. What is /pom2? That obviously you should be getting it from app.py. So this is what is happening over here. So basically we're extracting out the input, and the chat model code which you see is now what this is all about, right? So basically we are saying, let's create this initial session first. And what's that session? It's nothing but, see this? It's sort of the text bison thing. Like if you recollect the code, we are text model from pre-trained text bison. In this case, it's the chat model from pre-trained chat bison. So it's just a matter of just initializing it with the particular bison family of models that you want. So is it text, is it chat, is it the other ones? So once we have it, this is more like you're starting a session here. That okay, we're starting this chat thing here. There is also a richness to this model. Remember, we were saying it also passes the context or whatever be the previous statements that we have talked about. So basically, you can see there'll be many other methods if you investigate, where you can get the history, you can add to it, and you can clear the chat and all that stuff, right? So basically, we are doing nothing but just creating a session over here. And once the session is created, right, what are we doing? We're just calling another method called response, which is just, again, I could have kept it in one method, but just the same chat model, just send us message with the parameters. That's it. You get back a text and you're done. But remember, like how you save this instance of a chat model, you can actually even ask me this question that let's say I stop using this application, I come back 2 days later, and I want to still keep my chat context in the next. So I could just continue my discussion with what the chat was. So what happens in that case is that there are techniques here. You can actually persist your chat session history into some kind of a persistent store, so that next time the user logs in, you can go ahead, get the chat session and pass it on. So what we're showing you is a very simple interaction, but there are ways you can make this interesting. You can make it persist. You can actually personalize it for, like, put in login here for all you care. And then, even have the next time the person logs in, I'll even take the chat messages that they have talked maybe a month back and continue for that if they like to, right? So that's really great, because I've seen people do that. They keep the window open, and then maybe a week later they come and continue the conversation. So it's up to you how you persist these things. So nothing much happening here really. It's just taking from your HTML page, right? And then calling this. And remember, we are creating also an entire application. So as you see over here, the app route for the home thing, if you just hit the URL, just renders the index HTML that we have. So basically, the page comes up, you enter your prompt, hit submit, it hits this endpoint pom2 that instantiates the model, creates the chat session, and sends the message to it and returns back. And of course, this is how the server is starting. So with me, that's pretty much what it is. At the end of the day, there's a Docker file, as you can see. Those who are familiar with it, Cloud Run requires that you have a container, image. Obviously, there are various ways in which we make it easy for you to host things in Cloud Run. If you wish to provide a Docker file like the one you see over here, we'll use that. If you don't provide a Docker file also, we've got the magic of, build packs that will sort of look at whichever source you have code. So if you just say, hey, I don't want to write a Docker file, Cloud Run, since you know so much about containers, you obviously can look at my folder and figure out it's a Python plus dependencies, blah, blah, blah. That's what build packs do. So instead of gcloud run command, deploy command, where you specify a container, you could have just pointed the source to a root directory, and it could have tried its magic and done this thing behind the scene. In multiple ways. But in case you want to see how the Docker file is, nothing much. It's just installing a Python. Those are familiar with Python, this should be straightforward. You install the dependencies, and obviously you're just launching the whole app.py and then starts listing on the port. Let me see if I can still log in on what's going on. Is it coming up or no? I'm having some trouble here with the login. Okay. No, can I? Okay, leave it. There is something that's probably odd here, and that's happening. But while this still works, doesn't mean the rest of it is not working. So over here, what I've done is I've just launched Duet AI, right? And you could actually literally like, for example, uh, if you want to ask some questions about Google Cloud also. So for example, what is secret manager? You could take here, get your answers if you want to. For example, even if you say write a Python uh, Flask route that, let's say invokes URL and prints out its content. So, you're asking for some code generation over here. So see here, it's actually even giving you the code, you can copy it. So I'm just saying eventually you'll have a system which helps you even understand this kind of code. So let's say if you take Docker file, right? And this is the context. I'm doing a little bit of prompt engineering over here. I'll just explain this Docker file to me, right? And I can just paste it and then see what it comes up with. There you go, right? So you see each line it's even explaining. So there are many ways by which eventually you will find that once you make Duet AI widely available to most of all of you, you will find this assistant always there with you to work, not just to get info on cloud, but maybe even help you with your coding tasks, even with debugging, even to explain code, quite a bit of things. Maybe in a future session or future season, we'll dive deeper into some of these things. So Abhi, that's a pointer, a new Code Vipassana season with probably a lot more AI than what it is today. Okay, so be patient.
Absolutely.
This looks exciting. Just give you a glimpse of it. I don't know what's happened to my ID. Otherwise, you would have seen this come up right within, the ID itself. So, but that's okay for now. All right, that's what previews are for. I'm just getting away, but that's fine. Okay, so having said that, we've looked at a little bit of code. So now it's time to build it. So build a container and deploy it. So let's go back to our terminal and at the same time ensure we are in the right folder. Keep that in mind. So let's go back to our code lab and step number 5, right, which is build a Docker image. Once again, just by habit, we are creating a few environment variables also. Again, as you see the later on commands, we're just using it. If you want to hard code it, feel free to hard code it also, but just do that. So this is going to be the artifact repository name, and we'll see later where it saves it. So just take it as is. Go back and let's continue our steps. So my chat app repo, just a variable that's set. The next thing is this is going to be your Cloud Run application name. So if you'd like some other name, feel free to modify that cat-flask-app to anything else. I already have it installed for my own demo purposes. So I'll call it app and I'll call it, let's say, new, right? Just like how we name our new files. So this is going to be my service or the Cloud Run service name. Now, first up, before we build a container and deposit it into the artifact registry, we need to create the repository. Think of a repository right now, right? Just as a folder or a place where all these artifacts would be kept. So as you can see, there's a gcloud artifacts repository create command. Create means it's telling you what's the name of the repository I need to create. That's going to be the variable we set. Where is it? Because it has to be by compliance and other purposes. Companies or organizations would want to store all their assets in a maybe geographical region of their choice. So that's the region you specify. And repository format. This is a new thing compared to the container registry, because container registry, which was the older form, its name itself tells you container registry. But the artifact registry, the name artifact, it could be various artifacts that it supports. One of the artifacts it supports is the Docker containers, right? But there are also other artifacts. For example, you could use this as your Maven repository. You could use this as your Node.js NPM modules. You could use this as even Python pip packages. So there are various things that you can store in the artifact registry. It's extremely powerful, especially for organizations who want to have a safe way to store some of the assets used across organizations or teams. In this case, it's a Docker image that we're going to be storing. That's why the repository format is Docker. Take that as is, paste it, and let it create itself. Okay, and it's good that I got this error because I had already tested out this lab, so it's telling me it's already existing. But in your case, you should not ideally get it. You will get it. So what I'll do is, it's good this happens. So you can see I can name my AR repository to any. So since I already have my chat repo, I'll also do it my chat app repo new. Let's just mirror that. So now that I have this variable that's created, I can go back and fire the same one, right? And you will see that the create request is issued for this new name and it's created the repository. Where would this go? Obviously, you have G Cloud artifact repositories list command also. But if you are adventurous enough, search for artifact registry. From the top, you will see there is actually one of these products that we have. So we go to artifact registry. I might have several of the repositories, but the current one should be visible here. And as you can see, let me go to the updated date. So I'll just sort it by this date, which is just now, which you can see over here. So this just now thing, what is it? It's the app repo new. And if it looks like a folder right now, but as you go there right now, if I go inside or if you go into the one that's created for you, you will see that there's nothing, right? And the format is Docker as we create. Fair enough. So the next step in this whole thing is we're going to be like just, configuring the Docker command just so that the Docker registries, etc., are known, a typical ones. So in our case here, we are doing this gcloud auth configure Docker. This sets a bit of various repositories which are there in different regions. So just the configuration part of it. So we go back to our, sorry, I minimized it over here. Let me just clear this up. That's done. It will just spit out a bit of, various regions and those mirrors that are there, right? And now, the main step, which is we need to build this, right? So behind the scenes, it will be using Cloud Build and submitting it there. So what we are saying is, see, we are not tagging it with that particular, like what's the, Docker, I would say that initial label, the whole tag. Then if you see, right, there's a certain, I would say, method to this whole madness. In a sense that when the container image is built, how does it know where to put it? And that's what we are precisely telling. We're telling it that, look, you know what? If you go to my registry, you see here, it's got the whole part which you see on top. There is the region and Docker package, then there is the project ID, and then there is the service name, right? So that is exactly what you're seeing here. You're seeing this region, you're seeing the project ID, and you're seeing the repository name, and of course the service name, right? The whole thing, right? So that's where it will know that once I've built it, where should I put it? So if you actually don't create the artifact registry, and if you give a tag which does not exist, it'll say, I didn't know where to push it, right? Or it might just, who knows if there's a way to even auto-generate it, but you need to be sure where you're putting your artifacts. So that's the reason we created the artifact registry first, and then we are telling it exactly where to go. So let's take this whole thing and fire this command. It'll take a while, but let's understand what it's doing. So basically from that folder, just make sure, please, that you were in that folder. So it's going to zip up. It's creating a tar of everything that's out there and just submitting it, boom, to Cloud Build service in the cloud. Cloud Build service, these are just console logs that are being streamed back to this terminal. Basically, it finds out what it is about. It finds a Docker file. That's why you're seeing these steps. It is actually executing, based on See that copy, then we have the run pip install, so it's installing all of this. This is right now creation of the container image. Let it go on. Please be patient, don't do anything funny. It will take a while. You're lucky that we're running this on Google Cloud with Cloud Shell. So basically you've got the best of networks out there. So, even pulling large images in case they are there, especially dependent ones, is much easier. You can see here is pushing this to US Central. So right now, once the pushing is done successfully, you will find that it's like over. Give it some time. So remember, if you had a CI/CD kind of a process also in place, you would have maybe changed the code. You would have committed that code that could have triggered a cloud build, and that could have then run some tests for all you care, and then pushed a new version of the image into the repository. Here we are showing you. So this is a good way to even understand, right, tomorrow how you can automate this whole thing. So let me just zoom a bit of this. So you see it's all got created and done. You'll also see that the image is what it is done, blah, 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 right? And if I come back to my artifact registry, that particular page, right? And of course, just refresh this part here. You should see that in this repository now, this container image has got pushed. And obviously, you can have multiple versions of it. So right now, there's only one version, but if you just change a bit and give a new version tag, you will see that it's already there, right? So this is, I'm just going into the details of it. The Docker image, any dependencies, any kind of, the standard stuff, the full commands, in case you want to actually use Docker itself to do all of these things. And obviously, we've also got some other feature. It's good from security point of view. I have not turned it on, but you see here in settings, there is something called vulnerability scanning. So if you put this, or if you enable it, then it will also see if your Docker image has got any dependencies about their dependencies, right? The whole chain of dependencies, anything that's known for vulnerabilities, it can even point out to you. So that's very useful. So tell me, how many of you have been able to create a successful repository, have been able to run this gcloud builds command, have at least visited the artifact registry once to see that is this thing really there, right? Okay. So the next step, as you can anticipate, is nothing but deploying this application. And again, if you see, it's going to just pick up our service name variable and see the image now. Now you're just pointing to that same thing in artifact registry. Rest of it is we're not doing any authentication. So let anyone invoke the Cloud Run URL that we get, and there are some other standard parameters we need to set. Remember, to the Cloud Run service, as you can see, we are even injecting these environment variables, because as you have seen in the code, you recollect, if I go back to the open editor and this code, and in the app.py, you see we were actually getting it from the operating system's environment. So obviously this runs, right? This is the Cloud Run code, and that's why you have to inject those when at the time of deployment. That's why you see this, that hey, it's even setting this environment variables. So one thing we wanted to point out, if you have already jumped and tried to run this command by copy pasting it from here, you will find that it probably results in an error. How many of you tried this and then you saw an error happening? It just says gcloud command, yes, error happened. So if it's happened, I'm very happy. Even I faced it, and it's good that at least things are going on live. There is one small problem with this, and if you are able to open up an editor and try it out, please make that change. You see, there's an extra space after each of the backslashes. So it's our fault. We will correct this stuff. But on each line, you will see there is an extra space. So one way to correct this is to pretty much remove each of the spaces at the end of this. So you'll see, yeah, or An easier way is, please go to the GitHub project. Just observe what I'm doing. Go to the GitHub project that we told you to, clone the repository from. Go to the chat Flask Cloud Run application, and in the README, you will find similar instructions. Just scroll down, and you will see the same command, right? And you'll see a nice little copy thing. Just take that. So,
Romin, easier one would be if you paste it in the chat.
So I've copied it. And I hope the chat doesn't do some other formatting. But give this a shot, what I've pasted in chat. If you really want to correct it, open up a text pad, notepad, TextMate, whatever is your editor of choice, and remove it. And if not, just pop it to see if, okay, anyone who's pasted it from the in-call messages in Google Meet and it's working fine. Okay, so everyone please take that. I'm doing the same thing. I just copied that and putting that into terminal. Okay.
Thanks, Romin.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so again, as you can see over here, this is some Cloud Run magic. It's going to be taking the image that you told to take it from the artifact registry. It just takes that, obviously, then it needs to provision instances behind the scenes. This is serverless, but still is occupying some kind of a compute infrastructure, right? So it's provisioning a VM behind the scenes with, of course, some configuration. Again, remember, what you're seeing is probably just a fraction of the parameters. Otherwise, you can even select, or further, if you go via the UI, you can even edit that. If you want to run it on some powerful configurations, we let you change the memory, CPU, and other things. So once that's done, it's deploying it, it's creating a revision, it's routing the traffic. The beauty of this is that tomorrow, if you make a change and you make a new version, you can even set that don't route anything at the moment. Let my testing team test this URL first, right? And then maybe you can route it, or you can even route part of it and do an A/B thing. It's quite magical. Please try out all of these things. So you'll get a URL. Either you click that, so maybe let's click that. Sometimes be patient. The first instance could take time. And this is the beautiful UI that I've been able to create. So one of the things, go ahead, submit a better looking UI or some enhancements to the repository. So that's your opportunity also to take the GitHub repo, contribute to that, and make changes to it. This is all I'm capable of, but I'm sure you can do wonders with it. For example, you might even say, I'll even store the history, or I'll really love someone to take this code and add authentication and say that next time, use your Google ID for authentication. And once it's done, I'll show you what your chat history was and then send that context. So I'm just showing you 2-3 ideas you can take to further extend it. And I think we have another program also that Abhirami has called Project Sadhana, right, Abhirami? Where you could potentially blog about this, submit your open source contributions. You can do a lot. So I really look forward to any contributions to this one. As you can see, it's like if there are no checks, no validations, all kinds of stuff. Even if something crazy is returned to me, I might just display it, right? So as you can see, what's the capital of Zimbabwe? Was one of the queries. So we send that and we get it. Or maybe, I don't know, could be like write a poem about the cloud. I should be careful, but I feel lucky today, so I'll let it do it. So here you go. So it just, again, the point to note here is that maybe the follow-ups, are they going to work or not? That's another little exercise for you folks, right? So for example, if I say, who is Sachin Tendulkar, right? And I send it. And here we go. And suppose if I just say which sport, now you see that, right? That obviously it gave an answer, but this is not the right answer. That is primarily because, as you would have probably observed from the code, that within the same session, so if I just go back to open editor, I mean, just the editor over here, within the same, see, every time that you're hitting that, right, you can notice we are creating this, completely new thing, and it is almost like a new session you're starting for a new user. So this is a great enhancement you can do, and that's where the real power of the chat model also will come up. There is not just written in the context, but if you go one step further, maybe you can associate it even with the login ID and then persist the chat across sessions. So that's a great thing to maybe enhance it. But from our demo perspective here, or whatever you want to do from the lab perspective, this is pretty much what it is. Like any other service which we saw even last time. Always, right? Just for those of you who are doing it for the first time, go to Cloud Run, right, and see that the service that you just like this. And if you see over here, it's 4 minutes ago, right, that we just deployed. So we can see here this chat Flask app new. And of course, in case someone says it's not running, it has some issues, you can see some exist, or if it's running slow, you can even get some of these metrics, or you can observe its logs if there are some problems. Yeah, so that's how it is. And maybe, yeah, that's pretty much, I think, what we have in this. If I look at the lab, yeah, this is just a screenshot, and next is obviously, in case you want to clean up. Don't right now just clean this up. Keep this project with you. It's in your project, and it's with your account also. So at least you can go back with it. So congratulations, well done. I think, as I mentioned, it just demonstrates both Cloud Run and chat model out here. But as you can see, the scope to possibly give contributions to this thing is quite huge. So take advantage of that, and we welcome your submissions. Having said that, I think we are at the end of this session, but I'll be happy to take in any queries or Abhirami, whichever way you see fit.
Hi, Romin. Deepak this side.
Yeah.
Am I audible? Okay.
You are audible.
Yes. So few days back, I had registered in Geeks for Geeks hackathon, and there was a problem statement regarding a cricket coach assistant. So for that, I had used Vertex AI chat Bison model, where I was ground sourcing our model, that is retrieval augmented generation. You might know, right?
Yeah.
So I was creating embeddings and storing in my Neo4j database, and what I had observed that in production this Vertex AI is not performing well. Like after 4 to 5 chat session, it is giving the same my question, or let's say any irrelevant data. So what may be the reason for that?
To be honest, it's a bit difficult to understand, at least based on this description. While I understand you're having a problem, I'm not like debating that, but it's a bit difficult for me to just say what could be happening without me even observing the code, seeing how it's written, what it's doing, so on.
Right.
At least, like in all fairness, something like a Vertex AI, the models which are in there for a while, used by a lot of customers, some of these fundamental things would ideally not be happening. So we just have to see what exactly has been written, what's going on, to see what the thing is. So I can't
Right,
say,
right.
because there are so many things out there.
So
One
actually,
second. Before we move on to the question and answer section, sorry, Roman, sorry to interrupt, and also Deepak. I'm just muting you for a second because there's a lot of noise from your end. I'm so sorry about that. But just give me one moment. We'll finalize what screenshot they have to submit for results for this particular session today before we take up more questions. So, Roman, is it okay if we ask the participants to submit the deployed applications screenshot, but with a different chat message, not the one that is there in the code lab?
Yeah. That would be, I think, a good final step to show that this is what worked. Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. So is everyone clear what we need to submit as as a result submission for this particular session? Show of thumbs, please. Perfect. You don't have to give the deployed app link. You can give the screenshot. It's saved in a drive folder, and make sure anyone with the link has access to view it. That way I can see the result. All the leads can see the result. And also, if you want to share the link to the app, deployed app, that's fine too, but that's up to you. There might be people who want to delete the deployed service after taking the screenshot, just so it's not exposed. That is fine to send the screenshot. So that's what I was mentioning. Cleaning up would just be to delete the service, but unless you share the service link to anyone or expose it publicly, no one will know your link. So unless you keep clicking on it accidentally, nothing will be charged from your account. But I would say still deactivate or delete the deployed service. Go to Cloud Run service on Google Cloud, search for it on the Google Cloud console. You will see the list of services deployed. In this case, you'd only have one if you have not deployed anything in Cloud Run before. But if this is not your first, see a list of services. Pick this one and delete it. That's all. Or stop the service. You should be good to go. But if you don't want to stop, that's also fine. You would not incur anything unless you share it explicitly. Once show where metrics of the hosted app. Romin, will you have that handy in your shared screen?
Yeah.
The monitor.
Let me bring that up again. So that will answer or at least point out what you also mentioned right now, as well as the metrics and other things. So let me just close these things. And I'm in Google Cloud Console, as you can see. And what Abhidami was mentioning about, to go to Cloud Run and at least see your services, or you should be able to see your service. Either you search from here, or you will see, of course, I've pinned it, but if you go down to, several of these serverless, you will see Cloud Run. I've pinned it, so it's obviously there at the top, but you should see Cloud Run here. Once you go there, you will see in services, at least if this is the first time you used, you will see what this particular service that you installed, the Flask application. You see a lot here because there's some other stuff that I'm doing. But one of the ways I actually go out is just click on this, or sort on last deployed, and you will see that 10 minutes ago I deployed this particular application. So if you go now into that application or service, is the right word. Someone was asking about metrics, so you're inside that service, you have this URL. So when you go to the URL, you get the app too, and you also see these metrics. These are some pre-built metrics for Cloud Run services. For example, someone says that it looks like your services is running really slow, or there have been some kind of failures that are happening, right? So you can actually see that whether someone has bombarded it, or like, is it suddenly like whatever requests have suddenly jumped. By the way, you can set alerts on each of these things. So there's a whole cloud monitoring aspect which you can do, but this is where you can see your metrics. At times, it's helpful to go to the logs for that service, because that's where you will eventually go. Someone says, hey, this is not working, or this is not, like, there's an error. You're obviously going to go over there and then start, seeing the log. So like in the code, you would have seen there is something like starting the session or chat session created, and that's the kind of messages you're seeing over here, right? Now, for example, you see this error, right? So you can even like expand it and then see what possibly the things could be going wrong. Again, this is within the service. There are also, for example, if you're really interested, to go to this Logs Explorer, and in Logs Explorer, it's for the entire system, but then you can, filter it out for Cloud Run and see the messages. By time, you can even say, okay, show me, you see this in the Chat Flask new application. So I can now start filtering and see the logs, see the chat session created, etc., etc. There's some warnings maybe, and I'd like to maybe be careful of what those warnings could be, right? So now see, it's simple. It's just the fav icon is not there. But I'll show you another cool aspect of Duet AI. So let's say you are in this log statement and when you expand it, you see this stuff called explain this log entry. This is new. And when you tap it, it opens up. You see this explain this log entry. It opened up the context. It put the context. And now it's giving you a particular explanation for it. And since this is a chat interface, you can even say, how do I fix it? I don't know. Let's see if it answers well. There's a lot of script, so pardon me if it doesn't go as per plan. But see, okay, so pretty cool. To fix this error, you need to ensure that the fab icon is located. Once it's there, cool, right? So this is again the power of Duet AI. So eventually, even if you see errors, if you are experienced, you know what's going on. But at times, this is great stuff to actually get help on, right? So this is another feature of that. Cool. Any other questions?
I want to, Likya, no, we don't need a screenshot of metrics. Just the screenshot of your result is fine. I want to give Deepak the opportunity to complete his question. Sorry to interrupt you before, Deepak. Do you want to finish your thought?
Yes. Hi, Romin.
Yeah.
Okay. So there were two deployments I had created in my Cloud Run. So one with chat history and one with without chat history. That means one with without chat history means whenever I'm sending questions, it is not sending any chat history. And with chat history means that is it is sending last four chat history.
Yeah.
So in the with chat history, it is giving that problem. That is after some 4 to 5 conversation, it is giving some kind of hallucination or let's say irrelevant answer, or let's say sometimes it is giving the same question what I have asked. So I'm not sure whether I should present to my any of client like because it is not helpful in my in production workload. That is what I have observed.
Sure thing. I understand that. What I would suggest to you, right, is the following. So you are able to see my screen, right? Now,
Okay.
before you even put all these prompts into your code and do the stuff, you need to test them out first, and whatever be the history and whether it's working or not. So my suggestion to you is please go to Vertex AI, okay?
Yeah.
And in Vertex AI, you have, sorry, you've got this language, thing, and you've got this start a conversation. So there is text chat, right? So go over here and please test out your stuff.
Yes, I had, yes, as I had already told, I had created an application with that. That means I had already tested all these things.
If you've tested it on the screen, what did the results look like? That's number one.
So, right.
If the results are not as per what you've expected, it's all going to be about whether you can tweak a few of these parameters here, or you can give some different context, or that's what I'm saying. I don't understand whether when you're talking about the RAG thing, like what's your embeddings, what's the context you're limiting it to. So these are just some general things I can give at this point. But without actively looking at things, it's very difficult for me to say what would be good. But this is pretty much what I would have typically done if my prompts are not getting the answers that we wanted.
Right.
Yeah. Further, remember, if you're just taking a general model, you should expect that the responses are going to be generalized and at times not what you expect. So unless you're really grounding it, unless you're creating a very sophisticated prompt to guide it in terms of how it's going to answer, you are always going to get answers at times which are not as per what you expect. That's the nature of these services. It's nothing to do with what you expect.
Okay. Got it. So on chat, I have sent my web app link that which I had deployed without chat history. Maybe you can check.
I'm sorry, what are you saying?
Like in the chat section, I have pasted a link of my web app which I had deployed on Cloud Run.
Okay, and
it is of without chat history, and maybe I will deploy it with chat history tomorrow, and we can let's say see whether it is doing correct or not.
Okay.
Yes.
1 second, just a question, Deepak. What API are you using? Sorry, I missed that part. Your app says Crick GPT. You're using a GPT API for it.
No, no, I'm using the chat Bison. Just I have given the name as Creek GPT.
All right, sounds good. Cool. Thanks a lot, Roman, for answering that. We are at time. I don't see any further any further question in the chat section. Roman, if you want to add a final few thoughts for the session, please do so, because this is your last session for this season. So anything that you want to be on the record, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks first up for the opportunity, and thank you everyone for being here for those sessions, doing these labs at this particular time. It just shows that you just have to keep building out your stuff. Remember, and I think Deepak's given a good example, these things are not like a very deterministic kind of a service. So obviously, you just have to keep playing with it to get the results that you expect. Hopefully, it gave you a glimpse of not just our models, but also some of our serverless services like Cloud Functions or Cloud Run. So please feel free to submit any PRs that you'd like to our samples. If you got some interesting samples, you're happy to just open source them, do let me know. We'll help you sort of tweak that and get it to a wider audience. So thanks once again, and all the best with your projects. Hopefully, I'll see you all in another season when we try something different. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Roman. This was really phenomenal, and a lot of people have already started submitting. And also, there are 2 other repositories or projects that Roman has created, and those are added to season 4 list as well. If you see in the silent finale, there are 4 applications, 2 of which are from Roman's repository. So please feel free to complete them as well. And if there are questions, feel free to reach out to us in the Discord channel. All the recordings for the past sessions and this one will also be made available. It's already available for the past sessions. This one probably in an hour or 2. It'll be there in codevipassana.dev page. Thanks, everyone. So the next session is on the 4th of December, which is also really exciting. So that one, it'll be a session that takes us back to differentiating ML, AI, and generative AI, because we will be just one more session away from completing the season. So I'll be running that session. That project is again about getting generative insights by creating SQL-based prompts and understanding the responses, asking the model that we'll be using for this generative AI implementation, the questions that we want to find out some insights for a movie rating prediction use case. All right, so we'll compare how to do that with ML and how to do that with generative AI, so you clearly understand the difference between the two if you're just starting off with it. And in that session, we'll also have 2 guest speakers who will do some lightning talk around how to use MongoDB from Google Cloud, because the user interface for it and the transactional app part of it is built with MongoDB. So feel free to stay for that part of the session as well. It's the same duration. It's not extended or anything, but it'll be in the last 15 minutes that's Mira and Megha from MongoDB will be doing that. So it'll be really exciting to see you all there. And the final session is December 7th. So we only have 2 more virtual sessions left, December 5 and December 7. The remaining sessions are all, sorry, December 4 and December 7, not 5. Apologies. It's 4th December and 7th December. And please don't forget to join for those. And apart from that, we have some live in-person sessions in different locations. So that you can find in the respective DevFest. If you're around, you please attend that. No, there is no, what do you mean by broadcasting live 3rd December, Jesse? I don't understand. You can unmute and talk.